brought to you by the Every Dollar app. Start budgeting for free today. Well, we're doing something we've never done on the Ramsey Show. We sent Jade Washaw and Ken Coleman to Washington, D.C. They've been up there for about the last 48 hours with the student loans restarting, talking to the man on the street and some women on the street and some people that should be on the street called congressmen. No, I'm kidding. And they're, learning about what's happening with the student loans. So what are you guys finding out up there?
Well, Dave, thanks for having us on. So we spent yesterday the full day moving between Georgetown, the campus, talking to a lot of students about their current debt situation. And then we moved to the mall in between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument and talked to so many different people. It was a lot of fun. And we heard, I think one key theme was that people really believe collectively, no matter how they vote or what they believe in from a religious standpoint, the message was tuition is too high. It's going up too quickly. It's outsized. And that was a very interesting theme, Jade.
I agree. And something else, they knew tuition was high, but when we asked the students, so how much are you paying each semester? How much are you paying each year? When you come out of college, how much total debt do you think you'll have? And it was really interesting. They kind of seemed in a fog about how much debt they were going to leave with. One guy even said to us, he said, I've got bigger fish to fry. I've got enough to worry about right now. I'm getting my MD. I'll worry about that, when I get out of med school. And I thought, oh my gosh, he estimated that he'd probably come out with about $300,000 or $400,000 of debt, Dave. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and his starting salary, he thinks, $60,000. So it's that kind of story that was pretty synonymous. Everybody thinks that tuition has got to be addressed.
Yeah.
So tuition's too high, so they're saying tuition's too high, but they don't know how much it is.
That's right.
That's right. Very
That's
interesting.
weird.
At Georgetown, a lot of these kids, Well, now, it's interesting at Georgetown, obviously, we saw a pattern, too, where these students were saying they didn't know how much they actually were going to owe because mom and dad took out the loans or handled all the details. So that was kind of scary as well.
And there's another piece to it, Dave and John. Not only did they believe that tuition was too high, everybody agreed that there's a major problem here. And we asked them specifically, well, what do you think about forgiveness? Biden, these administrations offering forgiveness. Do you think it's a good idea? And here's what I thought was really remarkable. They all thought, hey, it would be nice to have forgiveness. All of us would love for somebody to come in and take care of our debt. But they all agreed that it was kind of a selfish, it was a selfish want that ultimately it probably wasn't best for people, for the government, for people in large to offer that forgiveness, A, because it's not fair for everybody, and B, because of the tax implication of burdening, others who maybe didn't even take out student loans with the bill.
I struggle with the cost part because it feels like yet another way of passing the blame onto somebody else. And I can drive by a car dealership, like a Porsche dealership, and the prices are going to be expensive, and the car is worth the money. I mean, it's expensive, but it's up to me to be responsible enough to know I can't afford a Porsche, and so I'm going to move on. Do any of those students that you met with own the fact that they're going to a school that they can't afford? They don't even know how much it costs?
Well, there's no question. You make a very good point, John. But I think it's different between the student who wants to go into social work, who goes and gets a really expensive degree and is only making $45,000, and then the med student that we talked to. There's only one way to get that med degree, and medical school is crazy. And to give you real numbers, because these
why is a medical doctor only going to make $60K?
Well, he's talking about the intern years, is what he said, as a cardiac. So he's got to intern for 3 or 4 years. But let me point this out, because John brings up a good point. But if we look at 2010 to 2022, the cost of tuition rose over 12% each year, when you had inflation only moving up at about 2.5%. So it is ridiculous. These colleges and universities keep raising the price because they've got an audience who just keeps getting the loan. The federal loan program and these colleges and universities are colluding. That's a simple fact.
That's right.
Oh, no question about it. If you cut the money off from the student loans, suddenly the price increases would go away. I mean, because they wouldn't have as many, they wouldn't have students willing or able to pay what they're charging. So
yeah, they'd have to address the problem. But that goes back to, Dave, what you've been saying for the last year, which is the student loan bailout program is almost beside the point. We deal with that after. Yeah. You don't deal with the flood without turning the faucet off first, right? At first, you got to deal with the faucet. And if they were serious about helping young people, and they were serious about helping students, and serious about not saddling future generations with trillions of dollars of debt, they would deal with that up front instead of bailing water and letting it continue to run.
You can't keep making the loans. That's intellectually dishonest when we got a crisis on our hands of student loan, epic proportions here. So did you run into people whose loans are starting back today?
Yes, it's so funny that you mentioned that. We got the opportunity to talk to several folks. I talked to a girl, her name was Ariel, and she was excited to talk to us. She had strong feelings about student loans and forgiveness, and she was really banking, Dave, on forgiveness from the Biden administration. And when she didn't get it, she's been seeing her interest pile up, obviously, since the start of September. And she told me, she said, Jade, I've already seen $1,000 accrue in interest from September 1st until today. She said it's the equivalent of 3 full payments almost. And she said it's blowing my mind how quickly this interest is accruing. She's an educator herself, and she's like, I don't see a way out. And so, I was able to talk to her. I said, hey, what if I told you that every day, several times a week on the Ramsey Show, we hear people come in doing their debt-free scream. They've paid off $70,000, $80,000, $220,000, whatever number of debt. People are doing it every day. They've just got to have the tools in order to make it happen. And honestly, they've got to believe that it can happen. And I feel like that's the missing piece, Ken, that we've seen.
And when Jade asked her that, she lit up. There was so much hope that just took over her whole body. It was a really cool moment.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. In my mind, there's 44 million people today that have a payment due for the first time in 3 years. In many cases, a large payment. It's going to take a chunk out. I feel like I don't know why. I feel like we're the only ones talking about this. Like the typical person in America is talking about it, but I haven't run into anybody in the media that's gotten that today is a big freaking deal economically, societally, everything else. Are you running into people out there going, my God, what a mess?
Not really. When we were on the college campus, it was interesting, Ken. On the college campuses, it's almost like they're just in a blur. They have no idea this is happening. I probably talked to 5 different students who I said, hey, do you understand the significance of today? I said, do you understand student loans have been on pause for 3 years? They're finally starting back. And they were like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. It's business as usual, Dave. It's not a big story because, quite frankly, it's so old. It's been around forever. And I think the American people have lost a lot of hope to where it's not a sensational story anymore, and that's what's really a crime. This has to be addressed from the leadership level in Congress, in the White House. It's a crime that they're giving this money away to people who can't afford it and then charging them crazy interest. This is not about helping people get educated. This is a hidden tax on the American people, in my opinion.
And there's a little bit of onus, Ken, on the parents in this situation because a lot of the students we talked to, they said from their own mouth, hey, I think my parents took out a loan. I think they signed for it. I'm pretty sure they're taking care of the bill. And, to which I said, hey, you better have that conversation and have it fast because when it comes time to pay the piper, you need to know who's on the hook.
Well, and Jade, you bring up a great point. There's millions and millions of parents that use the college their kid got into to give themselves a pat on the back and to be able to tell their friends and church and the community.
That's right.
Instead of having a realistic, honest conversation about, hey, child, what do you actually want to do when you grow up, and what is the best path for you and our family there? They just want to run and say, hey, my kid got into Georgetown. My kid's going to Georgetown.
That's right.
Forget the fact that it's going to be 40 years of paying that thing off.
Yeah, what a mess.
Yeah,
what
that's
a mess.
absolutely right, John. Yep.
Wow. Jade Washaw, Ken Coleman in Washington, D.C., reporting live on the first day that the student loan payments kicked back in officially, as of actually technically as of last night, but there you go. And man, we're starting to see some movement out there in the marketplace, and we thought we wanted to be right on the front lines.